So welcome all from wherever in the world you're joining us from. I hope that you're safe and well, and very grateful and happy to have you joining us today. Some housekeeping before we dive in. This session is being recorded and it's going to be available on demand following the event. So that's good to know. And please note also the chat box if you feel drawn to do so. We'd love to hear who you are, where you're joining in from. My name is Gwen Cunningham. I'm the lead of the textiles program at Circle Economy. And Circle Economy's textiles program has the mission to achieve a zero waste industry. So we do this in two ways. We work with collectors, sorters, recyclers, and cities to build the infrastructure needed to valorize textile waste. And we also work with brands to train them on circular design and to support them to build circular business models. And of course, circular business models, that is the topic of today. Since 2019, and with the support of the Loudest Foundation, I have been working on the Switching Gear project, a 2-year project that aims to accelerate the uptake of rental and resale business models in the apparel industry. So on behalf of the Switching Gear project and its partners, and in collaboration with GreenBiz, we're hosting 2 panel sessions today. This one here on how to resale, and following this, a second on how to rental with my colleague, Len Smits. So feel free to join that after. So to briefly introduce the topic before we dive into a conversation, why apparel resale? Why is that needed? And a shift towards fast fashion in the past 2 decades has really led to a dramatic decrease in what we call the practical service life of our garments. So how long they are actually worn compared to the technical service life of our garments, how long they could be worn. So we know that compared to 15 years ago, today's consumer is buying around 60% more and keeping their clothing for half as long as they used to. At the same time, we know that to extend the practical service life of a garment is deemed to be one of the most effective ways to reduce the overall impact of the industry, as it can hopefully reduce the need for new production and new consumption, and also on the same hand, start to really decrease that growing textiles waste mountain. These alternative business models also are seen as having some promising revenue potential. And the market is growing day by day. It's poised to more than double in value from $24 billion in 2018 to $51 billion in 2023. And some research is even predicting that the secondhand market will outpace fast fashion within the next 10 years. But despite all of these environmental benefits that are promised and the financial opportunity that is seen, only a handful of forward-looking brands are really implementing these models and doing so at scale. And so this is why we have a how-to session today. And I'm really delighted to be joined by 2 esteemed panelists, both members of the Switching Gear project, and each of whom are at very kind of different stages at their resale journey, you might say. So in the next 20 minutes, we will be discussing, where are they and what have they learned so far. So let me briefly introduce them. I will start with Cynthia. Cynthia Power is the director of Eileen Fisher Renew. And Eileen Fisher is a long-standing frontrunner when it comes to resale, having launched the company's clothing take-back and reuse program in 2009, which has grown in double digits year over year. And every garment that Renew takes back is sorted for its highest value and either resold, remanufactured, donated, or recycled, helping Eileen Fisher to become closer and closer to a truly circular company. And secondly, we have Jacob Dworsky. Jacob is the co-founder and COO of Asket. And Asket is an independent, online-only menswear brand founded in 2015 with the mission to slow down the fashion industry and change the way we manufacture, market, and consume clothing. Based on honest production, transparent pricing, and revolutionary sizing, Asket produce and sell a single permanent collection of timeless essentials. And in recent years, Asket have begun to explore ways to minimize or maximize the lifetime of their garments. And towards that end, they are currently designing a resale business model via the Switching Gear project that I mentioned earlier. So welcome, Cynthia, welcome, Jacob. We have a very brief 20 minutes together, so I want to dive right in and do it in a way that kind of helps us to tackle the component parts or steps of a resale business model. So to start us off, I think we can go straight there and talk about probably one of the most critical steps in a resale business model. How do you actually engage the consumer, right? The success of your model depends on your ability to get back that used product from them. And hopefully you're getting back a high volume of product and also a relatively high quality of product. So maybe Cynthia, since you have a model in the market for many a year, I'd love to hear, what take back incentive does the Eileen Fisher Renew program offer? Why did you choose for it? And what have been some of those challenges that come with it and the benefits that come with it?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So our incentive is a $5 rewards gift card that our customer can use for the purchase of future Eileen Fisher clothing. We give the $5 for each and every garment we get back, regardless of the condition that it's in. So it can literally be, you dumped a glass of wine on yourself, or it could be brand new with the tag still on, but we give the $5. And I've tried to find out why the $5, and I still don't know like how that conversation happened 10 years ago and why it was decided. But I think that it's served us really well, and our customer continues to bring back product for that. A lot of customers bringing back multiple pieces at a time just to get a discount on a future purchase, whether it's a purchase of Renew or of our main full price line. And what was this? Was there another part of the question?
Have you had any challenges with the incentive that you're offering?
Yeah, I think that as of now, we have not had any challenges. It's been interesting because we have seen, like, when we first started, the quality was, I think maybe 70% of what we got back was in perfect quality, and now maybe 40% of what we get back is in perfect quality. So we've seen that kind of steady decline in quality, and we're still happy with the 40%, honestly. But I think that as that goes on, I think that number will continue to kind of erode. And I think that as the secondhand market gets more and more robust and easier for consumers to participate in themselves, like Poshmark and those types of things where people can get more money for their product, I think we'll have to rethink the $5. And I'm kind of tinkering with it now, just what might make sense. But for now, it's where it works for us.
And around that incentive of the $5, was there a large effort in terms of marketing and communication? How do they find out about the fact that they have this option available to them?
I think, there's been a few moments where we've told the story really loudly as a large brand, and those have been the moments where we've gotten the most, engagement and kind of landslide engagement. I think on a day-to-day basis, we're actually we think we can do better, and we're in the process of making it a larger part of the Eileen Fisher story, just as part of the larger brand. But it's really been in like a few key moments where we've told the story loudest. And otherwise, we know that we have a lot of customers that still don't know that the program exists, and we need to figure out how to reach out to them.
I love this word, landslide.
Literally, landslide of clothing. It's not a pretty thing.
Because it's something that I've heard you speak about before, that actually, that first campaign of yours was so successful that you're still processing much of what you collected in those early days. Is that right?
Yeah, we did our first big campaign in 2013, and we told a story across all of our stores in the entire United States. And it took us like 4 years to process all of the product we got back. So we've finished processing it, but it took us a long time, and we had mountains of clothing.
Well, congratulations for getting through that first batch after 4 years. That's phenomenal. You must have had such a volume. And Jacob, you're obviously in a very different stage. You're at the moment when you're starting to think about all the various incentive options available, and probably looking to people like Cynthia for, the $5 model, which is very different from, for instance, models whereby brands say, we really take back everything and anything, or we give a 10% discount on your next purchase, which is obviously more variable. So where is your head at when it comes to engaging the consumer?
Yeah, we're still very early on, as you say.
I think you are.
No, it should be on. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So we're still trying to figure out the exact levels of this. For background, we also, much like Eileen Fisher, are intending or looking at a take back where we want people to be able to return anything, and not just clothing in perfect condition, which of course also plays a big part in what incentives you can offer. But we're testing, the setup from different levels. So a fixed one like Eileen Fisher has, or a variable reward, and trying to see how the customer responds to it. And all of it is really about trying to find a good balance between the incentive being attractive enough to get the customer on board, but at the same time, the impact on consumption and the cost side of it. So we don't want customers to perhaps prematurely return garments just because it's a very attractive offer. Also, I think, we're not in a position to really compete on a high reward. There are quite a lot of costs involved in just taking back and handling the garments. And in that sense, if you want to maximize the money you get out of it as a customer, you're probably better off turning to another kind of resale model, which is more geared towards just the perfect garments. But so that's kind of what we're trying to figure out the levels of right now. And it's likely right now that we're going in the direction of a more symbolic reward. Kind of like we want to view it as there's a system in Sweden and many other countries, I believe, where you get a return when you return like a PET bottle. We call it pant. Something like that, where it's a symbolic gesture for doing the right thing. So the true incentive of joining this is not a monetary one for us or for the customer, hopefully, but rather the being part of the circular journey and doing the right thing.
And is that also a decision that's just by the way you describe it now, it feels also like a decision that's also trying to kind of trigger the right motivation in your customer and kind of foster the kind of care that speaks to your brand image and your brand values.
Exactly. So, I mean, for us, it's really important that the reward is fair and transparent, and that because that's what we are as a brand, but also fairly simple, and that we can, the best case is that a customer uses their garment, buys it and uses it until the end of life. That's like the core idea of what we do, but we know that doesn't happen all the time. There are circumstances that lead to it, ending up in the bottom of the wardrobe, and then we want to make it easy, convenient to hand it in and let us find a new home for it or a new user, but not make it into sort of, buying it and selling it and doing that on repeat just to get new clothing all the time. Yeah.
What you say there kind of leads me into the next part of questioning, which is around what actually happens when the product comes back. And what you say, Jacob, is such a triggering thought, that the consumer is looking for more important transparency in the supply chain. And usually we understand that as the early part of the supply chain, not the end of life supply chain or the end of use supply chain. But now they will start to demand, and we see that already, that same level of transparency over what happens once I give it back. And so, many say that that's in a way where the real work begins. You need to sort according to quality and type. You need to clean and repair as needed. You need to photograph. You need to re-merchandise. It's really a whole suite of activity that is a new set of operations and requires new sets of skills, technologies, processes. And Cynthia, I look at you because I know that you've innovated multiple times on that back end process with Renew, and also trying to find the right balance between what's really something that we're going to hold and house internally versus what will we outsource. So what does the current Renew operations look like in the background? And what would you say to aspiring brands who are trying to decide on whether this is something they want to build capacity for internally or something they want to lean on partners for?
Yeah, so I think I would answer that by saying, I think my company is very good. I think your company is good at starting projects and just starting small. Eileen loves to start small and then grow it and grow it and grow it. And so, the project started in-house and it's still, mostly in-house. We started taking back, employee clothes and then customer clothes and just dry cleaning them, rack by rack. And now we're, last year we took back 240,000 garments. So we do everything ourselves in terms of the take back and the processing. We have 2 warehouses, one in Seattle and one in north of the city, north of New York City, I should say. And they receive take backs, they sort them into their appropriate categories, and they clean them. They have them cleaned, or we do some cleaning in-house, and then we're doing all the re-merchandising and that you were talking about what's resellable, what's not resellable. And so it's a huge operational lift on our end. And I would love to think of us as innovating on the back end. I feel like we just, each time we get bigger, we have to go it always comes down to running out of space, and we have to just figure out how to make a better use of space. So it pushes us, which is what I love. And then we work with a third party, Trove. They used to be Yerdle. Some of you are familiar, I'm sure, but now they're Trove. And we've been working with them since 2017. They run our website, so eileenfisherrenew.com. So, we send them product that's all clean and ready to go, and then they warehouse all of it and fulfill orders and also run the website itself. So, we started working with them in 2017. I'm really glad we're working with them because I think, even though we like to do things in-house at Eileen Fisher, I think on the technology side, we're not as kind of, I don't know if we would have a website yet if we hadn't partnered with Trove. So, anyways, I'm really glad that we are, and that, and I would totally recommend to any resale, anyone thinking about resale, that they should also think about, unless you're exceedingly great at operations yourself, there's a lot of third parties now that can do, can help you kind of figure out how to work with your product.
And I think what your model speaks to is exactly also sometimes the concern that it's not that you have to outsource the whole thing. There are many solution providers that can play a part of the chain, and that's also an option available. And to jump then to kind of the actual resale of secondhand product, and maybe do a little bit of myth busting, because oftentimes a point of attention or a point of concern is around, how do we price this secondhand product? How do we market it? How do we merchandise it in relation to the first-hand product? And with Jacob and your team, given the fact that you're a relatively young brand to begin with, how do you see that concern of cannibalization? Is it a load of hot air? Should we put that one to bed now?
I'm sure it comes from somewhere. And if you're running a business in one way, you're afraid of changing that and what could happen by adding other channels and things like that. But to be honest, for us, it's not a concern that we have starting this out. Essentially, if a customer would choose to buy a used garment instead of a new garment, I don't really see that as a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's the better choice, to be honest. And we need to build a business that can really incorporate that in a sustainable way. Long term, I also think that this part of the business is going to grow, and if they're not buying that used garment from us, they're probably going to find it somewhere else. So why not also nip that in the bud directly? And finally, I think from our end, just the initial customer research we've seen is that the overlap is not that great, and that it's not that many of our customers that are at least initially interested in saying that they would totally switch to this, but rather this this can be an opportunity to reach another customer, a new one that may, for other reasons, not be looking at us right now.
Yeah, great, thank you. Another maybe elephant in the room is the question of the impact potential, the true impact potential. Does this do what it says on the tin? And there's a lot of discussion around kind of the metrics that should be involved in these alternative business models as they develop. And Jacob, back to you, maybe even if you're in early stages of thinking about it, what are the things that would be critical, in your opinion, to track as a brand to prove that, you know, this does what it promises, what it set out to do in terms of impact reduction?
Yeah. So that is really tricky, I believe. To really answer that question, you know, you have to look at the displacement rate and the utilization rate of garments, data that you would get readily available just by running this. So there, I think we would have to turn towards surveys and asking the customer, really. It's something that we've used to a great extent in other areas of our business where we can't gather the data on our own. And has been really good. We have very engaged customers that like to participate in this. But of course, that will never give you maybe the full truth. The more exact things that we can look at on our own is, of course, you know, what is the volumes we're getting back? How much of that can we resell, repair, recycle?
Yep.
And we can also exactly. And we can, when taking it back, we can ask the customer to fill in things like, you know, why are you returning this? How much have you used it? And get data on garment performance that can be very useful in actually improving the garments long term. And then
maybe on that, Cynthia, oh, sorry to cut in, Jacob, but I'm curious, Cynthia, with Jacob's comment on kind of the feedback loop on design, is that something that you've experienced? Is this, you know, this secondhand product telling you something about how you should be thinking about the first-hand product differently?
Yeah, it does. One of the biggest kind of examples of that is of all the product that we get back that we cannot resell for, you know, too old. You know, we can find uses for different categories, but there's this one big kind of monster category that is, you know, anything with a high percentage of spandex in it, like, you know, a lot of stretch. We just can't, you know, nobody wants to touch it in terms of recycling it. So we're really stuck with it. And we are just, so anyways, it's been highly, that kind of literal pile of clothing has been a huge influence on conversations about what materials we choose going forward. And, you know, spandex is important to our line of full price products. So we can't just say, you know, forget about it. But there is a lot of interest in what are the alternatives to spandex. And I think it's really helped kind of push that conversation.
We are somehow, don't ask me how, but we're coming up against the 25 minutes already. And so I'm going to jump to the final question, which is, what advice would you give to brands listening, looking to design and launch a resale business model?
I would just say quickly, you know, go for it. Talk to some people. There's so many partners out there now that you could speak with. You could speak with Gwen, you could speak with Renewal Workshop, you could talk to Trove. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole list. And I think, you know, talk about it because you could just be something that you can outsource, you know, and not have to do yourself. So check it out.
Thank you. Jacob?
In the interest of time, then I would say what has given us a lot of insights is really talking to our customers and understanding, gauging their interests and see what, you know, how can we get them involved. And then I would say really get going and start testing in small scale. At least if you're a brand like us, you can really do small tests even before you go and partner with someone, to just do it manually on your own. There's really not that much resources needed to get some initial insights. And then you can build from there.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. Thank you both. That is coming up to the 25 minutes. So very much a big thank you to Jacob, to Cynthia for sharing your insights. Tell us what you thought of this session by filling in the survey, which is pinned at the start of the chat box. If you're a brand innovator, anyone thinking, dipping their toe in the space, please feel free to reach out to us at the Switching Gear Project. I'm putting the link in the chat now. We have an enabling network that is really here to help those who are curious and want to drive this in the industry. So we would love to hear from you. And that's all from me. So thank you very much. And I hope you join the next session on rental with my colleague, Elaine Smits.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Cynthia. Bye, Jacob.
Bye.
Bye.